Hey everyone, to keep things interesting, I'll be doing a handful of these faceless videos, but I will primarily be sticking to my original style. Now, with that said, today I have two stories written to me by supposed park rangers, so please take them with a grain of salt, and if anything, at least try to find entertainment, as this first story details Jasper National Park yet again. And the second story is about these two rangers that go on a road trip to Oregon to come back and have this whole host of weird stuff happening. Anyway, let's get into the stories. I worked as a forest ranger in 1995 to 1997 in Jasper National Forest in Canada. Now, during my time there, I had heard strange stories about unsolved mysteries. Rumors of unexplained activity, conspiracy, and strange happenings had been whispered for years by the locals, but none of them could be proven true, at least from their experience. I was intrigued by these tales at first and decided to start investigating some of these unsolved cases myself. While many people assumed I was crazy for delving into such sensitive matters, I persisted despite their warnings. My investigations led me down a dark and twisted path that unveiled a world of hidden secrets and dangers just beneath the surface of Jasper's rugged landscape. One particularly disturbing event took place in 1997. A search and rescue team was sent out to investigate a possible missing persons case right near my forest ranger post. After about 2 weeks of searching, they finally located the individual, having been lost for days on end among the various trails. While my own experiences paled in comparison to such harrowing tales, it still made me question what other secrets lay hidden beneath the lush forest surrounding my station. Worse yet was when my search and rescue team found this man. They were horrified to discover that his top half of skull had been mysteriously removed. Even more bizarrely, shortly after this incident, another search and rescue mission occurred in a different part of the same park. This time, it was a woman, age 45 roughly, who had gone missing. She was eventually discovered by our team, but her eyes had appeared to be surgically removed, and she showed signs of extreme trauma. The search team had found her body in a small clearing, no signs of struggle or bloodshed. It was as if she had been carefully placed there and then forgotten about. As I stated, the woman's eyes were gone, crudely removed from their sockets by what seemed to be the work of an expert hand. Her face looked pale and haggard, her skin worn and stretched like leather. Even more disturbingly, the search teams also discovered that some of her teeth had been extracted as well. These events left me both horrified and fascinated. I became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind these mysterious happenings. Despite warnings from reputable individuals that I should stay away from such matters, I was determined to. Not long after this, I began seeing the involvement of our military coming in and steering the ship, so to speak. These two events are only two amongst dozens I have heard about or investigated during my time as a ranger in Jasper National Forest. Everywhere you go, people seem to be talking about people going missing under strange circumstances, and an eerie silence seems to pervade the area. It's a primal fear that has taken hold of people's hearts, as these mysterious disappearances continue to haunt the people I know. From what I can tell, there appears to be something sinister lurking here, something much more powerful than any of us could possibly understand. The stories of missing people continue, and I had heard of some truly disturbing accounts. People would go out on casual strolls in the woods, only to never be seen again. Others went out on hikes with others and vanished without a trace. Search teams would always come back with little to no evidence of what happened, and every one of these cases seemed like a complete and utter mystery. Other strange occurrences were reported as well, such as objects being found in the forest that were not originally there, strange animals or beings suddenly appearing out of nowhere, witnesses claiming to have seen giant birds swooping down from the mountain sky. And yes, there were multiple that I took. I'll get to that in a minute. while others said they had encountered large, unknown predators stalking them through the trees at dusk. These reports were extremely troubling and filled me with dread each time I had heard them. Of course, I did my best to keep some of these private, for fear I would lose my reputation and my career. I tried to dig deeper into these unsettling cases. I heard more and more stories of reputable individuals who had gone missing while searching for the truth. Many of these people were honest, hard-working folk who were curious about what lied beyond Jasper National Forest. But after a few days of exploring, they would just vanish without a trace. It began dawning on me more and more that something truly was happening, far darker than any of us could ever imagine. I had a harrowing experience with something that I can't explain. This was either 96 or 97. While on a late evening patrol, I had an encounter with what I can only describe as a large primordial bird. It looked identical to a pterosaur and seemed to have this otherworldly presence about it. Large wings, a long beak-like protrusion, and these almost ambery eyes that would stare into my own as if it were trying to communicate something to me. It was terrifying yet mesmerizing at the same time, and I could never explain why I felt so connected. Of course, I never shared this experience with another soul, but perhaps I attract the metaphysical. The creature was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Massive wingspan, I'd say at least a few meters. Its feathers or leathery skin seemed to be an array of dark colors, from deep greens and dark blues, and on the face appeared an almost vibrant yellow. It almost glistened in the setting sun. As I said, its eyes were two large glowing orbs that seemed to pierce my very soul. Its presence alone commanded attention, even though it remained still before going in the air while we locked eyes with each other for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, it flapped its wings and flew away so quickly, I felt like I had just dreamed up the entire encounter. It was only when I arrived back at my station, shaken and confused and trying to process what had just happened, I realized something strange and powerful was truly at work here. Even now, after all this time has passed, individuals still tell me stories, their honest stories, I believe, of more and more unexplainable things. Another one of my coworkers at the time had a very similar and disturbing story. They had reported seeing a large upright wolf creature in the woods one night in a meadow. It was as if it had come from another world, and its presence alone caused them to flee in terror. My coworker described the animal as massive, wolf-like, but not at the same time, dark gray fur, and here's the weird description. They swear they claimed it had these two long antennae protruding from its head. Its eyes were glowing yellow, and it could almost see right through you, like it was trying to read their mind. The claws were on another level, like that of a bear, and it even glinted in the light of the sky. As if sensing my coworker's fear before fleeing, it let out a howl and seemed to almost dissipate into a wispy mist on the ground. Now, personally, I have no explanation for the events that have occurred in Jasper National Park to my knowledge and from what I've heard and reported, but I can safely say from my own reputable and honest perspective, something wicked truly lies beneath its beauty. Whether it's dark magic or some unknown force, it appears to be very real and is certainly something to respect and be cautious of. In 2005, I worked for the Forestry Service for a short time here in Kentucky. My job was set to explore and survey remote areas of the state park. Now that summer, me and a coworker took off on a road trip to Oregon for 2 weeks. We were best buddies and became good friends while on the job. We were driving through unpopulated areas when several strange things happened that would change our plans forever. We eventually pulled off on the side of the road for some rest just before midnight. Both of us were getting tired, and we swiftly fell asleep. I was abruptly awoken, however, by a loud thud, and the car rocking back and forth as if someone or something was pushing it from behind. Startled, my coworker and I both sat there paralyzed with fear while this unknown force continued to shake our vehicle. Now, after several minutes, it suddenly stopped, and all that was left in the air was simply dread. We both stepped out of the car to investigate, but there was not a trace of anything around us. How odd. And that's when we saw something. In between the trees in the darkness of night, two bright eyes were staring at us from a distance. As we slowly moved closer and closer to it, I noticed that its gaze was transfixed on me and my coworker. We could tell that whatever this was, it had been tracking us, swaying its head back and forth as if we were being studied. As we stood there unsure of what to do next, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up in fear. Whatever this was began to move closer toward us, but with a smooth and deliberate gait that was almost otherworldly. My coworker and I were completely petrified, unable to move or do anything except stare into those two piercing eyes. It was only after several moments of this intense, innate primal fear that we finally managed to muster up courage, jumping back into our car and speeding away as fast as we could. This thing began to follow us, but eventually disappeared into the night. Now you're probably wondering, what was this thing we saw? To be honest with you, I have no idea. But to this day, we're still unsure of what exactly it was on that dark stretch of road. I've talked to several people who've offered up various explanations and even theories, but nobody was able to offer any concrete evidence or proof as to what it might have been. All I know is that whatever it was, it terrified me and changed the course of my life. You see, not long after that is when these things started to happen to me and my coworker back in Kentucky. Almost like a negative energy had followed us. We began to hear strange drumming echoing through the woods every night, as if there were Native Americans ready and hungry for war lurking nearby. When we would go to investigate the source of these mysterious, strange, haunting sounds, nothing would be there, except an eerie silence. Shaken by this experience, we would quickly return to our patrol vehicles and leave the area without a second's notice. Things continued to go like this for weeks on end, until we would start noticing more and more. For example, my coworker began noticing something out of the corner of her eye, like some hallucination. It was tall and slender, two red eyes staring through at her like looking into her soul. There was no sound, but she would claim to feel an overwhelming presence, as if always being watched from the shadows of the trees. You might be thinking, well, she probably needs psychiatric help. But I promise, we were both in good condition mentally and very stable. My coworker had later confessed to me that she would sometimes hear faint whispering while surveying parts of a trail or just doing general park ranger duties. Thinking it was auditory hallucinations, she would listen closer and she would notice that the whispers wasn't like someone speaking to her. It was like a group of people having a hushed, whispered conversation. But more importantly, the conversation wasn't in English. She said it sounded native, but wasn't a language she recognized. Now, my partner and I are both convinced that something strange and, dare I say, supernatural was following us. You gotta remember, this is hard for both of us because we were staunch agnostics. And then we go up to Oregon and have some strange experience, come back down here after our road trip, and now all these things are going on. We continued to work together, of course, but we'd keep our eyes open and would make sure to stay alert, not mentioning these things to anybody. We continued to work together, but we kept our eyes open and made sure to stay alert while on patrol. We both knew that whatever was out there had the power, as much as we did not want to admit it, to bring us drama rather than respite, and gloom rather than peace. So it was essential for us to remain vigilant at all times. Now, during the coming months, we would hear strange reports of UFOs, black shapes in the sky, and strange metallic sounds echoing throughout the night sky. We had no idea what it was, but it seemed to be everywhere, and we could even feel the presence at some points in time. But more importantly, these reports we'd hear about were from campers and visitors of the park. These strange occurrences continued, leaving us both with a sense of confusion, dread, and uncertainty. Others in the park, notably eyewitnesses we spoke to, would sometimes, and more often than not, describe horrific screams in the night and an overall general uneasiness, as if they were being stalked by someone. They felt unsafe. We recognized these accounts as similar to our own experiences, but no matter how hard we tried, we were never able to find any evidence of this entity or determine what it wanted from us. I could continue on, but I feel like closing here is probably best. Whatever happened that night to us in Oregon seemed to stay with us, changed our life forever. Even to this day, I'm no longer a park ranger. Remember, this was 17 plus years ago, and I'm still more alert and cautious than ever before because of that one night in Oregon that seemed to be the catalyst for all the events to come after back in Kentucky. Now keep in mind, before we made this road trip to Oregon, I was already working as a ranger for about 4 months in Kentucky, and I won't name the national park, but I had never had a single quote-unquote weird thing happen. It was pretty much just life as normal, like any other normal person, again, until I had that event happen to us. Even now, I don't even like to think about it because it just seems so silly and ridiculous. I myself have such a hard time entertaining the notion of UFOs or aliens or even the supernatural, but sometimes I feel like you gotta call things for what they are. I mean, I feel like things can be better left unsolved, even though a part of me wishes that I can unearth the answer someday. For now, all I can do is be prepared for anything that might come my way, and I suggest you do the same.